Diary entry number 13. Time to go. Sometimes people ask survivors what finally made them leave. They expect there to be one moment, one final beating, one dramatic event, one thing that suddenly makes everything clear. For me, it wasn't like that. It was 1,000 small realizations, 1,000 broken promises, 1,000 nights spent wondering if I was going to survive. And after reaching the darkest point of my life, something inside of me had shifted. I don't know exactly what clicked. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was hope. But for the first time, I wasn't thinking about how to survive anymore. I was thinking about how to get out. I was also going to prosecute the woman and her dog. I thought if I could get that done, I'd be financially well off. The last straw for me was that the lady was apparently where number one was getting his drugs. She was one of his contacts. When he told me this, he told me I should just let it go because it would come back on him and it would become my problem. I couldn't believe how much he just didn't care about me. I knew then that nothing would change. I would find other ways to escape his grasp. I started putting fillers out there to see who I could trust. There was one couple that had already helped me a lot. The husband was the one who would stop and ask if I needed a ride when he saw me. And we bonded with his wife over vegetables at the farmer's market. A few weeks after I lost electricity, the landlord found out and came to my door with hard questions. I broke down. I cried. It was so hard to tell someone out loud what I was going through. I feared judgment, and I was scared I was going to be kicked out without having any place to go. They told me I should go to a shelter. I had Puppy, and I wasn't about to leave her behind. It seemed like they didn't really care about me. I was just a tenant. I confided in the couple. She immediately went to her house and got me a phone and showed me how to get free minutes. She and her husband also worked out a plan to get me out of that house. Yeah, strangers. Years later, in my second abusive relationship, I would discover that strangers are way more helpful than people you actually know. They helped me pack up my belongings and told me I could bring Puppy and come stay with them until I could get back on my feet. I was so thankful. I didn't even tell the landlord where I was going for fear they might tell number one. Unfortunately, these people weren't the greatest of housekeepers. They lived in a hoarder house with cockroaches. However, I was safe in a way. And I ate food, like whole meals, not just scrounging around nitpicking at stuff. They helped me get on food stamps. They helped me find a job. And about after a month, they took me to their car guy so I could put a down payment down on a vehicle. I was starting to get some of my confidence back. I did my job well, and I got promoted. I made friends, and I finally had a vehicle. Somehow, number one found out where I was working. He showed up, and once again, he apologized. But this time, I was completely done with him. But I wanted to get some of my things back that I knew he had. I knew I had to pretend that I wanted to try again. I allowed him to take my vehicle, but when he took it, it died on him because apparently it needed an alternator. He contacted me about it, told me where it was. He didn't offer to pay for it or have it towed. The address he gave me was of another woman he was probably seeing. I had it towed and fixed. Meanwhile, I told him that I'd come over to his new place to visit. When I got there, he was on the phone making plans to leave me behind and take my vehicle. I said no, and it turned into an argument. He hit me for the last time. While he was on the phone, I went down into the basement where my belongings were. As I carried those boxes out to my vehicle, I was crying. I was scared. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing, though. I was done. Not the kind of done I'd been before. Not the kind where I left and went back. Not the kind where I believed apologies. Not the kind where I thought love could fix addiction, abuse, or violence. I was done. For real. I loaded up my belongings into my vehicle, got behind the wheel, and drove away. I didn't know exactly what my future would look like, but for the first time in a very long time, the road in front of me belonged to me. Later that evening, I took a restraining order out on him so he couldn't just show up at my job whenever he wanted. And for the first time, there was a boundary he couldn't cross. For 3.5 years, number one had convinced me that I was powerless, that I needed him, that I couldn't make it on my own, that no one else would ever want me. He was wrong. The day I drove away wasn't the day he won. It was the day I took back my life. It was the day I chose myself. And although I didn't know it then, it was the beginning of everything that came next. The abuse had taken years from me, but it wasn't getting the rest of my life, not anymore. Or so I thought. At the time, I believed the hardest part was over. I believed that once I escaped, everything would start getting better. I didn't know there were still lessons ahead of me. I didn't know there were still wounds I hadn't even begun to heal. And I definitely didn't know that one day I would find myself facing another abuser. But for now, I was free. For now, I was driving toward a future that finally belonged to me. And for the first time in 3.5 years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Thank you for joining me on another diary entry. I'm a soft-spoken survivor, and this is the Nervous System Diaries. I'll see you in the next chapter tomorrow. Thank you for listening.